So today, Trek dropped the upgraded 2022 Speed Concept Triathlon and Future TT bike, and I thought it would be fun to look at this bike, break it down, and figure out what is going through Trek's mind, because there is a lot of stuff to love here. There's a lot of stuff that fixes a lot of the complaints that I've had in previous conversations, and it looks like a fun bike. One problem, it's $8,800. So for those of you who invested in Bitcoin in 2012, let's dive in. Interestingly, Trek does not update the Speed concept very much. The last generation was updated last in 2014, so 7 years, and that's a long time in the bike world. And Trek did a lot of work to this bike, even though it's very subtle at first glance. So let's do a quick overview and then dive in. So there's an entirely new front end to this bike, which actually removes a lot of the proprietary parts and replaces them with more standard parts that are easier to work on. Huge thumbs up. There's an entirely new integrated between the arms aero bar system. There's Downtube storage, there's disc brakes, there's an IsoSpeed decoupler, which aims to basically smooth out the ride, and they claim that it's 16 watts faster. We will talk about that, of course we will. They changed the geometry a little bit, and overall, it feels like this bike was designed really more user-focused rather than testing-focused, which I'll talk about a little bit. So let's talk about that front end. The front end of last year's Speed concept, or the Speed concept of the prior generation, was essentially very proprietary. It was very Trek. So rather than having two risers, it was a mono riser, which went into base bars and a stem combo. And that was also your aero bar extensions. So there was a lot going on there, and it was actually quite adjustable. But the problem was, when you bought the bike, you had to pick between one of 6 stems and one of 4 pedestals, and you didn't get the other ones. So if your fit geometry changed over the course of owning the bike, you became either more flexible or less flexible, you might actually have to buy a different front end for that bike. The new one, though, I think they've moved into a much better direction. So they've actually, in a way, sort of gone back a step, but gone back a step in a good way. So now, instead of having all of those pedestal and riser combinations, now there are 3 pedestal options, which is, it's the brakes, right? It's the part you hold on to if you're like standing up. There's 3 of those, a low, a middle, and a high. Interestingly, they made a change as a result of this, which I'm a huge fan of, which talks about the travelability. And I have complained about this in a video I made that was really popular that talked about things I don't like that brands are doing. And that is, bikes should be easier to travel with. Triathlon bikes, especially $10,000 ones, often get flown around to races. And the ability to just remove the stem top cap and essentially slide the entire aero bar extension setup off of the steerer tube makes it so that you can actually build this bike in your hotel room without needing to completely redo or mark all of your fit coordinates. That is a massive, tangible time saver and a great move by Trek. Next up, let's look at the storage. There's a lot of storage thought put into this bike, specifically 4 main ways. There's a new between the arms aero bottle, there's a fully integrated Bento Box, there's a Downtube aero water bottle, and there's a Downtube storage. So let's talk about all of them. The between the arms bottle, optional accessory. It does not come with the bike. To be really clear, you do pay more for that. But I like that they actually considered future integration and they considered how people are actually going to use this bike. The integrated Bento Box. I normally don't talk about Bento Boxes. And one of the things that I like about this one specifically is not just the fact that it has one, but that they specifically call out that it's removable and machine washable. For those of you who know what it's like to have nutrition spilled all over the front end of your bike, that's a tangible benefit. I like it. The Aero Downtube bottle, I don't really have anything to say on that. It's a bottle. That one does come with the bike, so you do get that one included in your purchase. The Downtube storage, this is interesting. I generally support the idea. This has been around on their mountain bikes and some of their other road bikes for quite a few years now. One note that I do have on this, and it plays into something else it doesn't hold that much. It holds one tube, one CO2, tire levers, and a multi-tool. I think most Ironman triathletes are probably taking more gear than that. 2 CO2s, and at least a patch kit, like a pre-glued patch kit. And the other thing to note here is it looks like they removed the bosses on the back of the seat post, so you can't put a behind the seat post box like the old Speed concepts. So it does seem like you might be limited to this Downtube storage or your jersey pockets. Disc brakes, it has them. I don't know what else there is to say about that. You know, I think we all know where we're at with disc brakes. Disc brakes are the future of road bikes. It's just a fact. Yes, they are less aerodynamic. Yes, they weigh more. Yes, they stop better, especially in the wet, especially on carbon wheels. You know, regardless of how you feel about disc brakes, undeniably that's the future. It made sense that they had to put disc brakes on this bike, and they did. So that's where we're at. IsoSpeed decoupler. If you have never ridden a Trek that has an IsoSpeed, you might be worried that it's gonna be bouncy or that it feels like suspension. It doesn't. I've ridden bikes that have it. It's actually hard to tell that it's there. What it feels like is riding a bike with really wide tires and low tire pressure. It's what I think IsoSpeed is really good at on the previous road bikes that I've ridden that have it, are smoothing out that road buzz, especially like on chip seal where you just get that constant just judder. That's what IsoSpeed is really good at taking care of. This bike also supports wider tires than previous ones. At least a 28 is definitely okay. I've heard rumors of up to 30, so you can put some wide tires on this if you really want that comfort, and maybe you're willing to sacrifice a little rolling resistance at lower tire pressures. So speaking of rolling resistance, let's talk about that 16 watt power savings claim, because I have been harsh on manufacturers in the past. But I gotta give credit to Dan Empfield over at Slow Twitch, because he pressed Trek to talk about where that savings comes from, because this frame is not radically different, and 16 watts of power savings is a lot of power savings if it was all frame drag. And the answer is it's not. A lot of the wattage comes from the wheel, tire, and fork integration and interaction. So this is really interesting. I just want to talk about what Dan says, and like I said, credit to Dan on this. About half of that 16 watts happens below the waist of the bike. 5 to 6 watts comes just from moving to a wider inner tire bead. A huge amount of it comes from the wheels. So just the wheels alone are changing it. It's not necessarily the bike. And this plays exactly to what I said before, which is, you know, when we talk about a bike being faster, what does that mean? In this case, I can't argue with Trek's methodology, because what they're saying is that the new speed concept out of the factory is faster by 16 watts, let's say, than the old speed concept out of the factory. So we will take them at their word, but it's interesting to note that it's not a frame drag situation, and that's what I've talked about so many times. The other thing they say is that a good bit of that comes from a reworking of the handlebars, which I already talked about, and basically that it's just better integrated, and it provides less drag. So that's actually a good transition to talk about geometry for a little bit. So on your screen right here is the outgoing speed concept. Take a look at it. And this is the new speed concept. Not wildly different. The astute amongst you might see it. Any idea? The chainstay length has increased by about 1 centimeter. So basically what that's gonna mean is kind of twofold. You will theoretically get better shifting, even though Rival is already really good. Wireless shifting is really good. You also get less responsive / more stable handling. So on a triathlon bike, longer chainstay just generally makes sense. That's what we're seeing in the market right now, so it tracks. And I've been very hard on brands in the past. The only thing I can really complain about this one on, I think, is the price. I think it's just brutally expensive. And not only is it brutally expensive, $8,800, and what you get is SRAM Rival. And that actually makes me wonder down the road, if they want to drop the price on this bike, how are they going to do it? I guess they could put some mechanical groupos on there, but SRAM Rival Wireless is not a $5,000 group, right? So they don't have a ton of room at the current pricing to drop this into even like a $4,000 or a $5,000 bike. Like even if you put mechanical 105 on there, that's not going to cut $3,000 off the price of this bike. So unfortunately, it looks like they have targeted an extreme upper end of the price category. And I mean, I'm not going to buy one. I can't afford that. So it's interesting because although the volume of speed concepts is very, very low compared to like a Madone or an Amonda, you do see a lot of speed concepts in the world. There's a lot of them at races. I will be interested to see how this fares against the likes of Felt, Specialized, and Scott, in particular Cervelo even. And we'll see how this bike does, but this bike will be with us for a long time. Trek does not update their speed concepts very often. Like I said, it was 7 years until the last update. So that's it. It's an interesting bike. I give Trek a lot of credit. It's not perfect, nothing ever is, but Trek does a lot of things right. They're not often the first to innovate, but they often come in swinging pretty hard and they do a good job. If you have any comments about this bike or other super bikes out there, or whatever bike you're riding, let me know down in the comments. I'm a huge bike nerd, happy to talk about it. Should be interesting. Will be interesting to see how well this bike does. I hope your training and racing is going well, and I'll see you next time.